Palmachim, Iran just struck Palmachim Airbase, not Nevada, where the Nazala missile destroyed the hangar and 3 F-35s in a previous wave, not Hatsim or Ramon or any of the Israeli air bases whose names have appeared in Iranian targeting claims across 27 days of this conflict. Palm, the base that Israel does not officially discuss, the base that does not appear on civilian maps, the base whose existence is acknowledged only in the most oblique official language and whose capabilities are described nowhere in any public document that the Israeli government has approved. Iran hit it with Sejjil missiles. The Sejjil, Iran's most advanced solid-fuel ballistic missile, not the liquid fuel systems that require hours of preparation and whose launch signature gives Israeli satellites time to detect the fueling operation before the launch occurs. Solid fuel stored, ready to fire. The launch vehicle drives to position. The missile elevates 10 minutes from movement to launch. No fueling signature, no preparation window, no early warning from the pre-launch activity that liquid fuel missiles produce. The Sejjil is the missile that was designed specifically to eliminate the early warning advantage that detection of launch preparation provides. And the runway that the Sejjil hit at Palm is not a runway that lands civilian aircraft. It is the runway that launches the aircraft whose payloads Israel has never officially described. The runway adjacent to the facilities that satellite imagery analysts have spent decades examining, and that every serious intelligence assessment of Israeli military capability references when it discusses the specific weapons that Israel maintains but never acknowledges. The runway at the base that is the operational home of the capabilities that Israel's doctrine of nuclear ambiguity was specifically designed to protect. Iran hit that runway with the missile designed to arrive without warning. Stay with me, because what Iran's SIL missiles striking Palmachim Airbase and destroying the runway that serves Israel's most classified military capabilities means what it documents about the specific targeting intelligence that found a base. Israel does not officially discuss what it reveals about the Sejjil's operational debut against the specific target category that required solid fuel capability to reach without warning, and what it means when the warhead that lands at Palm is not landing at a target that can be described in the public vocabulary of this conflict, is the story that the base that has no official name and the missile designed to arrive without warning together produce the most classified Israeli base, the most capable Iranian solid fuel missile on the same morning. Before we continue, a quick note. Many of the events we cover on this channel follow recurring patterns: economic stress, geopolitical escalation, and systemic shocks. While researching these patterns, I created a detailed report called The Global Crisis Survival Guide, where I break down the warning signals that often appear before major global disruptions and practical strategies for navigating them. If you're interested in reading the full report, you'll find it linked in the description below. Now, let's continue with today's analysis. Let's start with what Palm actually is, because the specific description of a base as secret or classified understates what Palmachim is and why Iran striking it is categorically different from Iran striking any other Israeli military installation. Palmachim Airbase sits on the Mediterranean coast, approximately 15 kilometers south of Tel Aviv, in the region of Rishon LeZion. Its existence is not secret. Satellite imagery makes it visible to anyone with internet access. What is secret is what happens there. What is officially unacknowledged is the specific program whose operational infrastructure sits within the base's perimeter, and whose runway serves aircraft and launch vehicles that the Israeli government has never publicly described. Palm is the operational home of the Jericho ballistic missile program. The Jericho 3, Israel's most capable strategic ballistic missile, whose range, payload, and guidance specifications are classified at the highest level of Israeli military secrecy. The missile that analysts assess as Israel's primary nuclear delivery vehicle, the missile that represents the specific operational capability that Israel's nuclear ambiguity policy protects by never confirming what it carries or what it targets. Palm is also the launch site for Israeli satellite launches. The Shavet rocket that places Israeli reconnaissance satellites into orbit launches from Palmachim. Those satellites, the OFX series, the most capable Israeli space-based intelligence assets, are launched into retrograde orbits from Palmachim, specifically because the retrograde trajectory avoids overflying Arab countries during the ascent phase. And Palmer Team hosts F-35I Adir operations, the stealth aircraft that has been the primary platform for Israeli strikes deep into Iranian territory. The aircraft that carries the precision-guided munitions that have been hitting hardened Iranian targets. The aircraft whose loss at Nevatim reduced Israel's deep strike capability, and whose presence at Palm makes the base a dual-function facility. Strategic weapon storage and advanced strike aircraft operation simultaneously. Iran hit the runway that serves all of this. Let's talk about the SEL specifically, and why its use against Palm is the specific weapon-target combination that represents the most significant single escalation in Iranian targeting doctrine. This conflict has produced the Sejjil, the name means baked clay in Arabic, referencing the stones that, according to Islamic tradition, were thrown at the army of the elephant, is Iran's most advanced solid-fuel, medium-range ballistic missile. Range approximately 2,000 kilometers, sufficient to reach any target in Israel from western Iranian territory with significant margin. Payload approximately 750 km. Maneuvering re-entry vehicle capability. The terminal phase guidance that makes intercept geometry complex. The critical operational characteristic of the Sejjil that distinguishes it from every other Iranian ballistic missile is its solid fuel. All previous Iranian ballistic missiles fired in significant numbers during this conflict. The Shahab variants, the Amid, the Gad, the Khorram Shar, even the Khyber Shakan are liquid fuel systems. Liquid fuel missiles require a fueling operation before launch. The fueling operation takes time, hours for some systems. The fueling operation requires the launch vehicle to remain stationary during fueling. The fueling operation produces a specific infrared and electromagnetic signature that American and Israeli satellites detect and track. The detection of a fueling operation provides warning time, not just of the launch of the preparation for the launch. Israeli targeting aircraft can be vetoed toward the launch vehicle during the fueling window. The launch can potentially be preempted. The warning that fueling detection provides has been a structural advantage for Israeli air defense throughout this conflict's ballistic missile exchanges. The SEAL eliminates that advantage. A solid fuel missile stored ready to launch can be fired from a mobile launcher that drives to a firing position, elevates and launches in approximately 10 minutes. There is no fueling window. There is no extended preparation signature. There is no preemption window between detection of launch preparation and the launch itself. The Sejjil launches from alert status. The first Israeli radar detection of a Sejjil is the detection of the launch itself. The first warning of a Sejjil strike is the missile in the air, not the missile being prepared. The missile airborne against a base that Israel does not officially describe in the time window that a solid fuel missile provides. Let's talk about what the runway destruction at Palm means for the specific capabilities that the runway serves. A runway is not just a surface. It is the operational enabler for every aircraft and launch vehicle that requires a prepared surface to operate from. The runway at Palm Kim serves three distinct operational categories simultaneously. First, the F-35I that have been conducting the deep strike operations into Iran that have been the primary Israeli instrument of this conflict's military campaign. An F-35 that cannot take off from Palmachim must either operate from an alternative base, Nevatim, whose hangar was already destroyed, losing 3 F-35s, or Hatzarim, or Raone, or cannot fly its mission. The redistribution of F-35 operations from Palm to alternative bases following runway destruction creates concentration at those bases that makes them higher value targets for subsequent Iranian strikes. It also creates operational complexity, maintenance infrastructure, weapons loading, crew facilities that does not transfer instantaneously to an alternative base. Second, the Jericho launch preparations that require the runway complex's infrastructure for the handling, preparation, and potentially the launch support of systems that the Israeli government does not officially describe. The specific operational consequence of runway damage at Palm for this program category is classified. What is not classified is that runway damage at the facility that serves the program affects the program's operational readiness in ways that runway damage at any other Israeli base does not. Third, the satellite launch vehicles that have been placing Israeli reconnaissance assets into orbit from Palm. A damaged runway does not stop all satellite operations. Some components of the satellite launch infrastructure are not runway dependent, but the integrated facility that runway damage affects at Palm is the facility that has been providing the space-based intelligence that has informed Israeli targeting decisions throughout this conflict's 27 days. The runway at Palm is not one runway among many. It is the runway that serves the most consequential intersection of Israeli military capabilities that exists at any single facility. Let's talk about the targeting intelligence that found Palm. Because finding a base that Israel does not officially describe in operational terms requires a specific category of intelligence that explains both how Iran targeted it and what the ability to target it reveals about what Iran knows about Israel's military architecture. Palm is visible from space. The base's physical location is not secret. The runway is visible on commercial satellite imagery. The physical dimensions of the facility about the hangars, the launch complex, the runway orientation are documentable from open-source imagery. The base exists. Its location is known. What is not publicly known is the operational schedule. When are F-35s on the runway? When are launch vehicles being moved? When are the specific high VC value assets that make striking Palm consequential rather than symbolic present at the base in configurations that make a strike operationally valuable rather than merely symbolic? Hitting an empty runway damages infrastructure. Hitting a runway when F-35s are on it, or adjacent to it, or when launch vehicle operations are underway, hits the capability the infrastructure enables. The Sejjil's 10-minute launch window means Iran could not have been reacting to a specific observed activity at Palm. The preparation time for a Sejjil strike is not sufficient to react to real-time imagery of base activity. The Sejjil strike on Palmachim required either standing orders to strike the base regardless of observed activity. Accepting that the strike's operational value would vary based on what was present at the moment of impact or pre-positioned intelligence about the operational schedule that allowed the strike to be planned for a window when high-value assets were likely to be present. Both options are alarming in different ways. Standing orders to strike Palm regardless of activity means Iran has moved past the restraint threshold that kept Israel's most sensitive strategic base outside the declared target set across 27 days of this conflict. Prepositioned operational schedule intelligence means Iran has penetration of Israeli operational security at the facility level of the most sensitive base Israel operates. The targeting intelligence debate is happening in Israeli security circles in real time. The sail hit the runway. Something about the targeting was precise enough to hit the specific area that maximized operational consequence. The explanation for that precision is either systematic or contingent. Either Iran has intelligence that provides operational schedule access to Palm, or Iran has struck with sufficient persistence and precision against a known facility location that the hit was the outcome of targeting consistency rather than targeting intelligence. The investigation into which explanation is correct is the most classified inquiry Israel is conducting today. Let's talk about the operational response options available to Israel after Palmachim's runway is struck. Because the response to a strike on the most sensitive military installation in the Israeli order of battle has specific parameters that a strike on a conventional airbase does not have. Option 1. Operational continuity from alternative facilities. The F-35 operations that were staged from Palmachim redistribute to Nevatim, already partially degraded, Hatzorim, Raone, and any other facilities with runway capacity and F-35 support infrastructure. This is the immediate operational response. It maintains the strike capability at reduced operational efficiency while Palmachim's runway is assessed and repaired. Option 2. Accelerated targeting of the SIL launch infrastructure. The Sejjil that struck Palmachim was fired from a mobile launcher that drove to a firing position, launched, and drove away. Finding and destroying mobile launchers is the hardest targeting problem in modern air warfare. The Israeli Air Force has been working this problem across 27 days of this conflict against Iran's entire mobile launcher inventory. The specific launcher that fired the Sejjil at Palmachim is somewhere in western Iran, having driven away from its launch position. Finding it requires persistent surveillance coverage of a mobile target in a country of 1.6 million kilometers. Option 3. asymmetric escalation. The strike on Palmachim is the most significant single Iranian strike on Israeli strategic infrastructure since this conflict began. The escalation response to a strike on the facility associated with Israel's strategic deterrent program has parameters that the escalation responses to strikes on conventional air bases do not have. Those parameters are not publicly articulated. They exist in the classified doctrine that governs how Israel responds to threats to the capabilities that its nuclear ambiguity policy protects. The response option that Israel selects after Palm will tell the world something about those classified parameters that the world did not know before Palm was struck. Let's talk about what the international community is processing from Palmachim being struck, and from the specific capabilities that Palm serves. The IAEA Director General issued a nuclear safety statement about Daimona when Iranian missiles hit the city near Israel's nuclear research center. The Daimona statement was about a nuclear facility being near a strike zone. Palm is different. Palm is not near a strategic capability. Palm is the operational facility for the capability. The international community's processing of Palm being struck runs through the specific lens of escalation toward consequences that the word nuclear generates in every government's risk assessment architecture. The IAEA does not inspect Palmachim. The IAEA has no monitoring presence at Palmachim. The IAEA's nuclear restraint call after Daimona does not extend to Palm in any formal monitoring sense. But the governments that received the IAEA's Daimona statement are this morning receiving reporting that Iran has struck Palmachim with the SIL, Iran's most capable solid fuel missile, and that the runway has been damaged at the facility that intelligence assessments describe as serving Israel's primary nuclear delivery vehicle program. Russia's foreign minister, Sejjil, issued an emergency communication within hours of the Palmachim strike reports, describing the attack as an extremely dangerous escalation and calling for immediate ceasefire with specific urgency that Russia has not previously employed in this conflict. Russia's specific alarm about Palmachim reflects Russian intelligence's assessment of what the facility serves and what damage to it represents on the escalation ladder that nuclear doctrine describes. China's response was the convening of an emergency communication to all permanent UN Security Council members, describing the Palm situation as requiring immediate collective response and calling for the implementation of China's nuclear verification ceasefire framework as the only available mechanism to prevent further escalation at the facility level. The 5-day power plant postponements deadline is approaching. The Pakistani mediation is carrying messages. Iran's foreign minister has issued 5 conditions. The IRGC Navy commander is dead. 8 attacks hit Tel Aviv yesterday, and Palmachim's runway, the runway that serves Israel's most classified capabilities, is damaged by the missile that arrives without warning. The escalation ladder has reached the rung that produces emergency communications from Russia and Emergency Security Council convening from China. Let's talk about what the Sejjil's arrival at Palmachim means for the Pakistani mediation that was simultaneously the most active diplomatic track since this conflict began. Pakistan confirmed it is relaying messages between the U.S. and Iran. Pakistan said the U.S. has agreed in principle to talks in Islamabad. Pakistan's foreign minister said his country has been facilitating indirect talks. The diplomatic track that was announced as active and proceeding on the same day that 8 attacks hit Tel Aviv is the same diplomatic track that is now processing the SIL strike on Palm. The IRGC's operational objective, stated publicly, was to remove any hope of negotiation from the minds of the aggressors. Striking Palmachim with a SIL on the day the Pakistani mediation is confirmed is either the most direct possible implementation of that stated objective or the most counterproductive single military action Iran could have taken on the day when the diplomatic track was at its most active. The distinction between those two interpretations, deliberate disruption of the diplomatic track versus military operation proceeding on standing orders independent of diplomatic track status, is the specific question that the Pakistani mediators are asking Tehran this morning. Iran's foreign minister is the official processing the diplomatic track. The IRGC's operational commanders are the officials who ordered the SEAL strike on Palm. They are different people in different institutions making different decisions on the same day. The foreign ministry track and the IRGC operational track have been running in parallel and in opposite directions since day one of this conflict. The sill on Palm is the day that the two tracks' opposition became maximally visible. A diplomatic channel opened, a Sejjil missile in the air toward the base that serves Israel's most sensitive capabilities. Both true simultaneously on the same day. The Pakistani mediators carrying messages between Washington and Tehran are today carrying them in a conflict where the IRGC has struck Palmachim. Here is what Iran's Sejjil missiles, striking Palmachim Airbase and destroying the runway, means for this war from this morning forward. It means the restraint threshold that kept Palmachim outside the active target set across 27 days of this conflict has been crossed. The base that Israel does not officially describe has been struck by Iran's most capable solid fuel missile. The crossing of that threshold is a one-way event. Thresholds once crossed cannot be uncrossed. The targeting restraint that produced 27 days of strikes on conventional military infrastructure without striking the facility associated with Israel's strategic deterrent capability no longer exists. It means the solid fuel missile that arrives without the fueling preparation warning that liquid fuel systems provide has been used against the target that most requires warning to defend. The SIL's design, rapid launch, no preparation signature, no preemption window was matched against the target whose protection requires the preparation, warning that SIL eliminates. The combination was deliberate. The missile and the target were matched. It means the escalation ladder has a new rung visible that was not visible before this morning. The rung below, the one that Pakistan's mediators are trying to keep from being reached. The rung that Russia describes as extremely dangerous. The rung that China's Emergency Security Council communication was convened to address. And it means the 5-day window before power plant strikes that Trump's postponement bought. The window in which Pakistani mediation and Iranian message review and Omani facilitation were supposed to produce the framework that stops the next escalation has been running while the SIL was being prepared. While the launch vehicle was driving to its firing position, while the 10-minute countdown was running, the diplomatic window and the Sejjil's flight time ran simultaneously. The Sejjil arrived before the framework. Palmachim's runway is damaged. The base that Israel does not discuss has been struck by the missile that arrives without warning. The most classified Israeli installation and the most capable Iranian solid fuel missile occupied the same coordinates at the same moment this morning. And the Pakistani mediators carrying messages between Washington and Throne are today carrying them in a conflict that has just crossed the threshold that every government in the world understands is the threshold before the threshold that nobody benefits from crossing. The Sejjil hit Palmach, the runway that serves what Israel never confirms is damaged, and the 10 minutes between the launch vehicle stopping and the missile in the air was not enough time for anyone to stop.